This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
It's 11:08 at WPSL 1590, the talk of the Treasure Coast. You're on Ask a Rabbi.
And this is Rabbi Shafir Lobb of Congregation Eitz Chayim, your Jewish home on the Treasure Coast in Port St. Lucie. So good morning, or if you're listening somewhere else, whatever time of the day it is, welcome to WPSL WSTU in beautiful Florida. It is a gorgeous day out there today. And thank you for being here. And as always, feel free to give me a call anytime during the call. It's 772-340-1590.
Yeah, it's 4 o'clock if they're listening in London.
Yeah. I was talking to somebody in Europe a little earlier, just before coming here. So, yeah, for them it's later in the day.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Almost dinner time.
Almost dinner time. Their work day is almost done if they work a standard 9-ish to 5-ish.
There you go. Yeah.
9-ish to 5-ish. And of course,
But it's starting to get winter over there.
Yeah.
You look up at
Because
in Minnesota
really
too.
In the north, yeah. You know, we in Florida look out and it's, either sunny or rainy or both. I love how we get both weathers.
It's freezing outside, man.
Yeah.
I got my winter coat.
So, so that's as good a segue to mention that we are having our rained out plant sale on December 13th. We rained out, thank you, Ada, which was the hurricane that decided to trek across the northern part and give the U.S. another run for its money with a small hurricane. It's all relative, folks. And it also depends on how your homes are built and what kind of debris you have in and around your yards. Hurricanes can teach you all kinds of things.
Oh, yeah. You bet.
And depending on their strength. So, needless to say, there were a lot of people who didn't come out in that rain, and I don't blame them. But our rain date is December 13th. So please join us at the Parks and Recs Community Center on Oroso, Sunday the 13th from 2 to 5.
And we will have commercials as such on the air. Yeah.
Yeah, we will. I'll make one up right away after we're...
There you go. Yeah, that's cool.
Okay, so we are in the month of Kislev, which is the month of Hanukkah for Jews. And here's a piece, folks. Hanukkah is not a major holiday.
You've mentioned that before.
I have mentioned that before. There's
Why?
A number of different... Because it's just not. It's about the Hasmoneans, the Maccabees becoming, throwing off the Greeks. Of course, if we really look at the bigger picture of world history, then we see that one of the reasons they were able to throw off the Greeks is because the Greeks were busy fighting the Romans. And the little backwash of Judea just was not that big a deal. And so Maccabees, with their guerrilla warfare, were able to, they didn't fight the same way. They didn't fight the big phalanx and the big standard kinds of battles. They fought in the woods and in the trees, kind of an intifada, but yeah.
Okay.
When you live in the desert and you live in the hills, there are passes that are still there that are described in the Bible from David's time. In that kind of terrain, that's the kind of warfare you fight. And it's not what the Greeks were used to. They were used to lining up with all their pageantry and demoralizing the other side as much as beating them. And, excuse me.
So it was the mental aspect of the Greeks as much as anything.
Yeah, that was a big part of war, was can you puff up your feathers big enough?
Machismo. We've seen that before. Yeah.
And since, yeah.
And since, yes.
I just call that peacock strutting, but...
That's true.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. I got bigger feathers than you got. There was that song many years ago, right? My dad's better than your dad. My dad's better than yours. Yeah.
Yeah, same thing.
You can Google that one, folks, and find that song. It's kind of a funny one. I don't remember all the words. There's a line in there about my dog Rex and having puppies. Yeah.
Kennelration.
Was that?
Kennel.
Yeah, Kennelation used to use it. Yeah, that's right.
Oh, gee.
It was part of their ad for a period. And so, you know, what can I say, right? But anyway, so Hanukkah celebrates when they were able to get the Greeks out of the temple, which had been converted to Greek worship. Then they cleansed it and they rebuilt it and they rededicated it. Hanukkah means dedication. And so it's about being able to dedicate. And dedications historically were during Sukkot, which is the fall festival, and it's an 8-day festival, 7 days plus 1, which in most math books is 8, unless you're in base 7, in which case it's 1. Never mind.
Unless it's new math.
Yeah,
Maybe
new math.
different.
Thank you, Tom Lair.
Ooh, I love Tom Lair.
Yeah, so
Man, I haven't heard that name in a while.
Yeah, I listen to him every once in a while just to keep
Talented guy,
perspective.
yeah.
Yes, he is, and actually a math professor.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, that
Yeah.
fits. That really fits it.
Yeah, well, it fits with a lot of things.
Yeah, okay. Huh.
And at good old Harvard.
Yes. Yep.
And so, where was I? So Hanukkah is about the rededication of the temple. It's about, my hair looks horrible on this video. I'm sure it looks horrible.
Oh, don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. Okay, yeah.
Not a
that's what it
big
is.
deal.
Anyway, so it was a rededication, and we get that out of the Book of Maccabees. The Book of Maccabees is interesting. It's not part of Jewish scriptures. They're actually not really well written, but thank you to the Catholic Church, we have the intertestamental books.
Because can you say that on the radio?
Yes, you can say that. Apocryphal.
Intertestamental. Wow, I have never heard that.
Yeah, in other words, it's after the close. Jewish scriptures closes with the books of Esther and Daniel.
Okay.
They're the last two books that make it into the canon Jewishly. And so there's this whole bunch of Judith and Bel and the Dragon. But and I'm making a little bit of light of the names of the book, but the Wisdom of Enoch and all of that stuff, those are not part of Jewish scriptures. Okay, because they're after Jewish scriptures is closed. They're later writings. They're not generally written as well.
Huh, okay.
And for whatever reasons, probably just not edited over years.
So who are the authors of all of these books?
Yeah, tons of people.
Tons of people, okay. Yeah. That's interesting, huh?
Right. I mean, the prophets in general are considered the writers of their stories. They're not. I mean, just as Moses didn't write down his stuff, religious leaders did not write down that. Buddha didn't write down his stuff. Jesus didn't write down his stuff. You know, nobody who is credited with starting a religion writes down their stuff until you get into modern times.
Wait a minute. You mean Charlton Heston didn't write his own stuff? Oh no, that's terrible.
Stop it.
That's terrible.
Stop it. Anyway, getting back to it. So Hanukkah, as I said, means dedication, and it refers to being able to clean out the temple. And it says in the Book of Maccabees, we wanted to do it in September. They don't say September, but in the fall. But the temple wasn't ready, and so we delayed it.
Oh, here we go.
Until the Persians were celebrating the Festival of Light.
Festival of Lights.
Okay, so they delay
Wow.
it, and they overlay it over other cultural holidays of the time, and they dedicate it at that time. And it's kind of a strange time to do it, but it's the dark of the winter, so it's a good time to bring light into the world. And then you get this little story that's kind of interesting that is taught in Hebrew schools all over about the oil lasting 8 days. That is not in the Book of Maccabees. You can read any of the books of Maccabees, and there's 4 books of Maccabees. You can read them cover to cover. Nowhere in the books do they talk about it. So why? And it's brought up into Talmud very interestingly. It's brought up this way. If you are carrying a wagon of hay through the city.
Mm-hmm.
And it catches fire from the candle on the stoop of somebody's house. Okay?
Okay.
Who is liable?
What?
It's tort law. Who is liable for the loss of the wagon of hay? And it's interesting, and it says that, most of the year, it is the homeowner or the person in the home who is liable because they need to put the lights out in a way that the wagons won't catch fire. Right, so you're liable for
There was tort law back then?
There was tort law back then because people had damages. That's what the eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth is about. It's about the value of an eye for an eye and the value of a tooth for a tooth. In other words, you can't take a life because somebody poked out your eye. But you can fine them the value of an eye for an eye.
Wow.
It's really a limit on tort law. And so in this case, it's saying that if it's the middle of May and you've put a candle out and somebody's wagon catches on fire, you're responsible for not having placed the candle safely because you put it out there. And it says unless it's Hanukkah. If it's Hanukkah, the wagon driver is responsible because he or she should know that Hanukkah candles will be out on the stoop.
Candles will be out. Wow.
Yeah. So and so then the next question is, what's a Hanukkah candle? May Hanukkah. What is Hanukkah? And then they answer it. And then they answer it with the story of the oil lasting for 8 days. So that's a story that's built up after scriptures, after the holiday is well set. And so let's look at 1st and 2nd century Judea. It's a time when Rome is in ascendancy, soon to come down, but it's still coming up to the cusp.
Yeah.
And they're ruthless. They're killing people for no good reason. You look at a Roman crooked, and that's a life sentence. And if you think I'm laughing, look up the crime of Mageus. It's very easy to be guilty of it. I'll talk about that in 1 second if nobody calls in. Mageus, yeah. It's a Roman capital crime, and so let me digress for just a second and say what it is. It's saying that anything is equal to or better than Roman culture. Okay?
That's stupid.
Well, we say that because we're Americans and we can criticize our government.
Oh, okay.
Okay, got it.
I get it. Now I get it.
Right.
Okay.
So Rome considered it a capital offense to even imply that there might be a life better than being under Rome's thumb. And to give you an example of Mageus, there's a story in Talmud of 3 rabbis that are having a discussion. And the one rabbi comes in and says, "Isn't it wonderful how Rome has built all the aqueducts and these baths and all these wonderful things in the city for us?" And the second rabbi says, "They built it for their own purposes." And the third rabbi is silent. Okay, now you might not think that that's any big deal. The rabbi who says they built it for their own purposes is guilty of Mageus and has to, in fact, run and hide for his life until the current Caesar dies. 13 years. He hides in a cave with his son. It's a long story. It's
wow.
A fascinating story.
Yeah.
And the rabbi who's silent is censured because he didn't defend, so he was therefore implying.
Oh, brother.
Yeah, so,
Holy
people
smokes.
were very, very sensitive about things that could get you killed under Rome. Because Rome, if you weren't a Roman citizen, Rome didn't really care whether you lived or died. And they frequently just, did the old-fashioned thing of killing a bunch of people to teach others lessons.
See, and I thought you were going to go 3 rabbis walked into a bar. Never mind. No.
No, this is 3
Don't-
rabbis
don't
who are
wanna
sitting
do
and
it.
having a discussion. And you wouldn't think that was any big deal.
No.
Right, but windows in those days were open. And people could overhear.
But he didn't say anything.
He broke the law.
Wow.
Laws don't have to be just. They just have to be the law.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Seen that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Laws are works in progress and subject to amendment. And so, there are governments today where it is illegal to criticize the government. Not in America, thank you, God. Thank you to our founding fathers who had reason to criticize the Brits, and so they made sure that there was an ability to criticize the government in the U.S. system. So, so that's a little bit about it. And so Hanukkah is going on, and because it is a light in the middle of the winter solstice month, it's a very popular holiday. What else are you going to do in the winter? You can't travel much. Very dangerous to travel in those days in that climate. It's the wet season. It's, horses trip and things are just donkeys trip. It's just not a good time. Not to mention that, stuff on the streets float. And
Sure.
People tend to stay in more than they do in Florida in the rain. And so if you've got a festival that's all about light and party and having fun, then people are going to want to continue doing it.
And in a way, it was sort of coordinated at that time with other religious beliefs who were having similar festivals of light in the wintertime,
but
the dark time.
There's a whole lot of light festivals going on. It's not yet, Christianity does not yet have Christmas, but Rome is looking around, and here's the problem. Why are you lighting lights? Well, because the Maccabees overthrew the Greeks. That's not going to play well in the environment of Mageus. And so the rabbis want to move it off of the political and give it another reason for being.
Wow.
And so they create the story of the oil. And saying that people are putting the lights out because God intervened and made the oil last for 8 days. It doesn't take that long to make pure olive oil, folks. We do it all the time in bottles and ship it all over the world. It just doesn't. Okay,
but
it's a great story.
But you can't find it anywhere in the Talmud, though, right?
What?
That
oil?
Yeah, the oil story.
Oh no, the oil story is in Talmud.
It is in Talmud.
It's not in the book of Maccabees.
Okay, there we go.
So,
okay, now I got it.
There's no, again, it's the same kind of thing as what I talk about when I say that there is no scholarly evidence for most of scriptures, because there's usually only a copy of scripture. The only copy of the story of the oil is Talmud. There's nowhere else is that documented. There's not two independent sources, so no, can't say much about it. But it's a popular thing, and it certainly makes it easier for, why are people putting out candles? Oh, because there was a miracle, right? So it sounds nice. And in the liturgy,
got a few left turns in there.
But it's saving lives, and there's a lot of stuff that's going on in that period in First and Second Judea, which is what my master's is in, by the way, is the interaction of the destruction of Judea and Rome, and what's happening in that part of the world in dealing with the situation in Rome, and. So there's a lot of things that are done to try to save lives. Another one that's done is to say that we don't have the blue strand in the talit, in the fringes, because the mollusk has gone extinct. It doesn't go extinct. They just stopped doing it because Rome had a rule that said you couldn't wear that color unless you were royalty.
What?
They had all kinds of crazy rules.
Yeah.
And so people, again, were being killed for it. It wasn't worth it, so they created a fiction that said the mollusk has gone extinct and we can't do it anymore. Yeah,
okay.
But archaeology now has found all kinds of the mollusk shells outside of establishments, so those must have been dying. Dying as in dying the color of techelet, a kind of beyond indigo blue. It's very, very deep blue. And it's more faithful a dye than indigo. Indigo will fade and wash out over time, but techelet does not. And
so
that was
indigo
the reason.
would almost be a sky blue, maybe? Or no, or darker than that.
It's dark. It's a dark blue.
It is dark.
It's about the color on. You can't see it, anybody here, but there's a a thing of Agent Orange over there that. I'm sorry. When I look at a thing of Lysol, I know that it's first cousin to Agent Orange chemically. That color blue. That's on that
The
bottle.
engineer that you are.
Yes.
Yes, you know all that stuff.
What can I say? There are easier ways to. Never mind. We won't go there. It is important to sanitize.
Yes. Oh, yeah, very much so. You bet.
And
thank you for bringing the other in.
yeah, it's the only EPA certified time-based THYME time-based antiseptic. So yeah, it's a cool thing. So anyway, that's the thing of the festival. And there's all of this stuff going on with Rome. You know, it's ironic because Paul, if he hadn't been a Roman citizen and demanded the trial, probably would have gotten off free. Because his crime was not that big, but he made a big stink about it. And so he got the wrong people upset.
Okay.
And if you've got a Caesar, there's nobody to tell him no.
Mm-hmm. No Supreme Court?
Well, there's the Senate. There's the Senate in Rome.
But they never opposed Caesar, though, did they?
Well, yeah, they did. They assassinated a couple of them, but
Well,
et tu, Brute, you know, yeah.
outside of that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, outside of those small details.
Yeah. Wow.
So, you know, it was not a time when life was considered, you know, and Nero is playing his fiddle, but wow. Yeah.
Oh.
They didn't have golf back. Never mind.
Oh my goodness.
Anyway, I'm getting.
Let's
far
bring it
afield.
into the current times here. Oh.
Yeah. Well, you know.
Speaking of current times,
Yeah.
our Secretary of State or Defense, whatever he is, was in the Golan Heights yesterday.
Okay.
Caused a little political uproar.
What else? Is, you know.
Yeah, I know. It's all kind of standard. Now, the news story said that the Palestinians had been run out of Turkey or something. Was that correct?
I'm going to defer because I have not read enough of the reports. So,
But anyway, the Palestinians were objecting to him being there, and then to the Israeli, I guess, villages that have now cropped up on.
yeah.
in that area.
The settler movement is putting villages all over the place.
Yeah.
And then the Golan, it has some strategic value because it's a higher terrain, and you can look
It looked
down.
like it, yeah, because
Yeah.
you could see the valley down
Yeah,
below.
well, they've got ski resorts up in there,
Yeah,
which you know, without that, Israel doesn't have any ski resorts. So it's
Wait a minute. Back up. Here we go. What, was that one of the first ski resorts?
yeah.
Really?
Well, no, modern times.
Yeah,
it's a
well,
ski
no.
resort, but
Okay. Huh.
yeah, none of the other mountains are high enough to
So
get
it gets
enough
that cold
snow.
up there.
Gets that cold and that snowy.
Wow. Okay.
So
I
yeah.
didn't know that.
It's not a long season, but it's a season, and because of where if you look at a globe, you'll see if you track the longitude lines, you'll see where things are in the little tiny. You know, Israel's not that big. It's a little tiny country. And
So why has there been so much objection to moving the embassy to Jerusalem? I thought Jerusalem at one point was kind of like the seat of everything.
it was, and it's the old city. In fact, is divided into quarters. It's a Muslim quarter, the Arab quarter, the Christian quarter, the Armenian quarter, which is kind of interesting to me because Armenians are basically Christian, and the Jewish quarter. Quarter is used not as in exactly a fourth of the
Right.
walled area, but roughly.
Well, the Armenians don't identify with anybody but themselves.
Right.
I mean, they're...
And they have their own language.
Well,
they
yeah,
have
they
their
do.
own churches. And I know exactly 2 words in Armenian. Ach and Sach, which is right and left, but I can't remember which one's which. So that was the that's the extent of my Armenian. I knew Armenians from when I lived there, and I've known some here too. We're an interesting mosaic of people, and we all come with different heritage and different ethnicities and this patchwork of stuff.
Yeah, I remember Carol having to cover an Armenian demonstration in East LA versus Turkey, I guess, and they've had their problems.
They've had their Holocaust,
Yeah,
they've had their ethnic cleansing and been the victims of it. It doesn't just happen to Jews. It happens to many different groups of people, minorities usually.
It's happening in Africa right now.
Yeah, it's happening all over, and it always causes me a little bit of pain when I hear "never again." It's like, but it is, it
is now.
It is now. Somebody's suffering that kind of situation. Maybe not on the same scale, but maybe so, because we've gotten smarter weapons. We've got horrific weapons. We've always had horrific weapons.
Yeah, but it has gotten worse.
How we can do that to people, and most Americans don't know about it because it's you know about it because you follow the news, but most Americans don't follow the news, and so they don't know the details and they ignore it. It's one of the questions that I like to ask my classes at IRSC. I'll say to them, "Okay, do you remember the film Hunger Games?" "Oh yeah," and they'll talk about the heroine with her weapons and all this other stuff. And I'll say, and who lives in the city? Who, where is it set?
Mm-hmm.
Where are we in that story? And most of the time, they won't get it. We're the rich folks in the capital, taking advantage of folks in the districts. The rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very clear allegory. I remember, I watched it on a flight, and I hadn't necessarily, and this is back in the day, dinosaurs roamed in the airplanes, but,
and flew them.
Well, what I meant by that is that there weren't that many movie choices, and I actually ended up picking it because it was short enough that I could watch the whole movie before the flight.
I've never seen it.
I saw it on an airplane, and I remember sitting there, and a woman coming up behind me as we were getting off the airplane saw me, saw the credits and turning it off as we were getting down in the plane. And she was sitting right behind me. And as we got out of the plane, she said, "So what did you think of the movie?" And I'm like, I need to process this before I sit and talk about it. So she didn't get a whole lot of discussion out of me. But I remember I thought about it for a good long time.
I have to see that.
Yeah, the allegory inside it, it's set with all this wonderful adventure and this craziness with virtual worlds bleeding into the real world, and the guy sits on a computer and real bugs crawl out of the trees. But so it's kind of this weird gaming cross realities, but the allegory inside it is pretty clear. It's pretty clear. And I don't think most people get it. And the students usually don't get it until we start pointing it out and talking about it. And then they start to realize that, oh my gosh.
It's getting deep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like one of the other, there's, yeah. I'll leave it at that. It's kind of speechless. But those are the kinds of things that are going around. And we are aware of a lot of things, and we do gloss over some of them. So the ancients saved people by changing the story up a little bit. So that's Hanukkah. How does it get to be so big? Well, it's up against Christmas. It's not the Jewish Christmas. But if you're Jewish and, you're fighting a bright, tinselly lit up tree, and we can have this long discussion of how the tree comes into Christmas. Thank you.
I want to know how the Hanukkah bush comes into Hanukkah.
Well, it's people who are jealous of a Christmas tree. That's clear. Who don't want to admit to having a Christmas tree, so they've got a Hanukkah bush.
Oh, okay.
And somebody gave me a mensch on a bench instead of an elf on a shelf.
Oh my gosh.
And Hanukkah Harry, right? or whatever.
Hanukkah Harry. Oh,
Hanukkah, it should be Hanukkah Harry. But
that's it. Yeah. Oh, gosh.
yeah. Or as
I think there's something sacrilegious
yeah.
about this show right now.
There's a colleague friend of mine that I gave a necktie to that says Chappie Chanukah. Yeah. But,
well, okay, that's the other problem
How do
I
you spell
have with
Hanukkah?
Hanukkah. How do you spell it?
Chet Nun Kaf He.
Okay, that's a CH.
It's a ch.
It's a ch.
It's
yeah.
a ch. Yeah, but English doesn't have a ch. And so, the one that seems to be least popular is a KH. You'll see an H.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
'cause-
what you see mostly now.
Yeah, because it's not Hanukkah. It's a softer ch than a k. There's a problem with a lot of Americans in making the ch sound. If you're not raised with a language that has a ch,
And most people are not.
most Americans are not.
Okay, I got you. Yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. No, most people can do a ch because America, while the third largest country in the world, does not have the most spoken. Chinese is the most spoken language. And then you've got Russian, which also has a ch in it. German has a ch in it. Loch Lomond, right? So the Gaelic religions have. We're one of that doesn't have it. Even Spanish has it. Right?
I have to ask Carol about that.
Yep, it's there.
It's there.
It's
okay.
there. Yeah, because I can transliterate with a ch in it. Only it's the J sound. Yeah.
La Jolla.
Yeah.
La Jala.
Yeah. Or Pinellas.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. La Jolla is a perfect example. The cholla cactus.
Uh-huh.
So lots of different-
Mojave. Mojave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Saguaro.
Yeah. So yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Lots of Spanish words that have different sounds than what we have in English. But people who are raised only on English often have trouble with the ch sound, and so they don't say Hanukkah, but they'll say Hanukkah. It's close. CH is an attempt to make it like in Loch, right? Loch Lomond, the lake.
Because you used to see the CH more in like greeting cards and stuff. Like,
yeah.
what's a greeting card now? But, thank you, Hallmark. But, yeah.
Yeah, so you're going to see the CH, you're going to see an H with a dot under it. That's another way that it's indicated.
Oh, okay.
And, so there's all kinds of different phonetic ways to spell it.
I never knew what that dot was.
The dot
That's
is a ch.
That's
Yeah,
the
that's
ch.
the ch.
Okay.
And because people try to do different things that are easy or not easy. How do you indicate a sound that we don't have in English? It's a challenge. And the comparison to that is teaching Chinese to distinguish between L's and R's, because they don't have that distinction in their language. It's just, there's sounds and they don't have a th sound. They got many sounds, but they don't have a th. And there's a lot of languages that don't have a th sound. So you hear things like zat. I'll take a cup of zat, please. Right? It's the z. Why? Because if you take the tongue and you move it back behind your teeth, it becomes a z.
Yeah, it does.
It either becomes a z or a z. Right? One of those sounds you'll get from people depending on what their native language is. So, I spend a lot of time with the Chinese students teaching them to make the th sound. And I tell them, you've got to see some tongue outside your teeth in order to make the th. Yeah, it's just underneath your teeth, right?
Yeah, I'm
Teeth.
just trying. Yeah.
Right? We show tongue. And that's very rude in some cultures.
Oh, jeez.
So, so you've got to teach people to do this, and they don't want to.
Because they don't want to insult anybody.
They don't want to insult anybody, so they want to keep their tongue behind their teeth, and then they can't make a proper th sound. You can get close, but it's going to be a little bit lispy.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And some Spanishes do have a lisp in it.
Castilian.
Yeah. Thank you.
I my last 2 years of high school, we had what was it, the Pious School Fathers, and they were
Castilian.
from Castile,
Yeah, they
Spain,
speak a slightly different.
and yeah,
And
yeah.
they have a lisp because one of the kings have a lisp.
Yeah.
So language is an interesting thing to study and look at. And it plays into so many of these different things. So the bottom line is Hanukkah's a semi-minor holiday. It's post-biblical. It's not a biblical holiday, but it's one that people really like because it's light in the winter. And, so it's fun.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets a lot more play because Christmas is commercialized. And so Hanukkah gets commercialized, and Diwali is getting commercialized, right?
Actually, it's funny you say that. I just got something on Facebook from one of our old ESPN vice presidents, and he's got some help in his home, and they're Indian. And so he had I guess it's the light, the lamp, and said whatever it was, happy something.
Happy Diwali.
I think it was, yeah.
It's either spelled with a W or a V.
Uh-huh.
Usually a W, but it's Diwali.
Yeah.
The victory of light over darkness, good over evil.
Ooh.
The rescue of Sita.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a wonderful sacred story. And I usually play I don't teach religion this semester, but when I have taught religion, there's a wonderful video out there about Diwali. It's an animation.
Oh, okay.
And it's not a funny, it's a serious animation, but it tells the story of the rescue of Sita. And that is the reason for Diwali.
All about the same time as what was going on in Israel, or
it's earlier than Hanukkah.
okay.
It's a very old story. It's part of the Vedas, and it's a great story. But it's got in it some fantastical things in it that are fun. Like it's got Hanuman, which is the monkey, and he flies over to the island of Lanka, Sri Lanka.
Whoa.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
And in the sacred story is an explanation of why there's a land bridge. This little, if you look on a map, you'll see this little tiny bit of land that goes out toward. It's most of it's underwater now, but and it.
You mean global warming back then? Oh, I'm sorry. That's terrible.
But there's this battle of conquering the demons on the island of Lanka, fighting them.
Wow.
And rescuing Sita, who's held prisoner on it. And then when she's rescued, the king says to her, well, you can no longer be my wife because you've been under the thumb of this bad guy, and, how do I know you were faithful? And she says, build for me the fire around me, and if I can walk out safely, then you know that I'm pure.
Ooh.
And so she does. And he then says, well, I knew that you were, but now everybody can see it. So come sit next to me. It's an interesting story. And at the end of it, so that's why the ring of fire, it's to remember that Sita walked through it safely.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a fun story. And people will say to me, well, monkeys don't fly. It's like, yeah, and donkeys don't talk either.
Then there was Mr. Ed. Oh.
That was much later, yes.
Yeah.
The zebra, yeah.
Oh boy.
So we grow up with these things, and people think that the lines between reality and fiction sometimes get a little blurry.
A little?
Yeah, I'm trying to be nice here.
Yeah.
Right. So when you're raised on a sacred story, you don't think anything of it. And why does it why is sacred story sometimes so fantastic? Because it's easier to remember something that's out of the norm. And what's the important part of any sacred story? It's not the details. It's the lessons.
The message.
The message inside the story.
Yeah.
right? And so it's made in a way that's fun to tell, that's captivating. And yeah, right. It's why was it important whether or not Abraham Lincoln? No, I'm sorry, I always get these two confused. George Washington and the cherry tree, right? I cannot tell a lie. I'm sure as a politician he told many lies. But honest, right? Right, honest George. Another George W. Right, George Washington was. I'm sure that's part of his campaign pushing was the story of the tree to show, oh, he's so,
Yeah.
That's why he can be our first president because he's so honest. It's PR. PR is not new. PR and spin are as old as human speaking. It just is. Yeah, and part of that's just a natural tendency to not want to embarrass yourself or the people with whom you're associated. And if you're missing stories, if you're missing part of the story, if you play the game of telephone, right, which we used to play as kids, right? You'd tell somebody something and you'd go around the room, and by the time you got to the end, it was, General Haley is driving through the compound in his Comet. Because people miss pieces of it and they fill it in as best they can by what they think might be there. And you do that if you're gonna fill it in, you're gonna fill it in with what's good for you. That's human nature. There's nothing evil or lurky about that. And so the more you miss, the more you fill in. So yeah. And we certainly drop pieces of ask any married couple or any two people working together. There's always dropped pieces of communication. And when you're married, you start to learn how to fill it in, but you're still not perfect. Did you say this or did you say that?
Right.
You learn to ask that nicely if you stay married.
If you stay married, yeah.
Right. I can say that I've been married for 40 years, which, is amazing since I'm, only 50. But
I was going to say, you got married at child bride.
I keep telling him that. He robbed the cradle. Well, he is older than I am, but I keep telling him he robbed the cradle.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, hey.
But you learn something by working through a relationship for that length of time. And part of it is to question whether or not you heard right or you thought right or you did right. Or, it's like when I leave here, I'm going to stop at the market. And believe me, I'm going to call and make sure that the list I think I have is the list that I'm supposed to have.
Yeah, Carol makes out a list for me because there's no way I'd remember this stuff. Yeah.
So it's things like that. And I'm usually decent at that, but I often forget one or two things.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Because I, too, am very, very human. And I remember that. So, anyway, that's the story of Hanukkah. Hanukkah starts on the 10th of December, the 25th of Kislev. So we'll be doing, it'll be Hanukkah during the time of the plant sale. So, yeah, we'll have a menorah up there somewhere for people to see.
The 25th of Kislev.
Kislev, yeah, 25th.
25.
Yeah, you think that, there's...
Okay.
Okay, well, so here's the challenge,
what's
folks.
What's that number?
Find out what the 25th of December really is, and you'll be surprised at whose birthday.
Oh, no.
That predates Jesus might be. And I'll give you a hint. It starts with an M.
Moses?
No.
Oh.
They didn't know. They don't know when Moses' birthday is. It wasn't important then.
M.
Yeah. Yeah, somebody's saying it over here, Mithra.
Who?
Start looking up Persia in Zoroastrianism.
Oh, here we go with the Zoroastrians again.
Well, that's a piece that they inherited.
Huh.
Okay, so it's very old.
Okay, and that's the 25th.
It's part of a mystery tradition, yeah. And so,
okay.
So just as Hanukkah was put over the light festival that was popular, So Christmas is laid over. Christmas Saturnalia. There's a lot of stuff going on in the dark of winter to cheer people up, because it's really hard when the nights get long. There are people that, Alaskans struggle with it, right, because it's dark. And any of the really northern reaches of Europe.
Oh, sure.
When it's dark all day and you don't see the sun, people go a little bananas, because human beings need the cycle of night, day, night, day, night, day, and people go a little crazy with all dark, and people go a little crazy with all sun. For the opposite same reason, if that makes any sense.
And for years you've heard that. That's interesting, because Seattle leads the nation in suicides.
In the winter.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's so dark.
Wow.
Yeah, that's why we now have sun lamps for people, so that they can get some vitamin D and cheer up a little bit. And it's why when I was in Luxembourg one year for Goodyear over June, the longest day of the year, and I will tell you, it's fun when you're not used to it to go out at 11 o'clock at night and be able to read outside.
Oh, bright sunlight?
Not bright sunlight. I would say bright dusk.
Okay.
It doesn't really get dark over there until for an hour late at night, because they're so far north.
We used to have baseball telecast on ESPN in Alaska. Midnight baseball.
Yeah.
It's like the sun's out. It's great. It's late afternoon, but
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because and people do go crazy, because we need that cycle, but people do live in the extremes of the planet, and so it's sometimes easier to darken your face and go to sleep and darken the room than it is to brighten it. People don't put enough light into their lives
I get that.
over the winter.
Yeah.
And you're right, the farther north you are, the more depressing winter is, because there's less vitamin D. Here in Florida, we need to be aware of skin cancer and, get some daylight, but not a ton, because you don't want to get sunburned and you don't want to get skin cancers. The incidence of skin cancer is much higher in the southern climates, but the depressions and things like that are much higher. Vitamin D has something to do with all of that.
Thank you, my dermatologist.
Yeah. Well, and so if you are one of the people who struggles with depression, one of the things you can do to help is to take walks in sunlight.
Yeah.
And that is part of the therapy today. We know that makes a big difference. It makes a huge difference. So we are very, very delicate balances of the chemicals in us, and we tell ourselves stories to remember the lessons. And much bigger holidays for Judaism, the Jewish New Year, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, which doesn't get as much play because it comes right after the New Year's holidays. It's 5 days later, so it's not far away. And Pesach, Passover, which is one of the enduring or long-lasting festivals. It comes with cardboard and things like that. And then there is the holiday that we joke about Jewishly. It's Shavuot, which is in the summer, so it's, the kids are not in Sunday school, so most people don't know about it. But that happens in the summer. The giving.
Oh, I know there's another side to this story.
Yeah. So that's the tagline. We'll talk about Shavuot sometime in the next coming season. But we're getting ready for Hanukkah. We're going to do the night of 10,000 lights at the temple.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so we're going to do that with Zoom, so people can show us their candles, and it's going to.
That would be cool.
Yeah, that's going to be a great fun. We're going to Zoom live that one, stream it, so people will be on Zoom. I need to get that Zoom link set up for people.
Oh, by the way, how was that big Zoom production?
That was fun. It was real. It went amazingly well. There were over 600 people on the Zoom.
600?
600 and some.
Wow.
Yeah, it went over 600 people
goodness.
on the Zoom. And the live stream of it, now we live streamed it ourselves, and we had some, I want to say 100, but I'm not I'm guessing, people watching it, but there were over 1.5 thousand, 1,500 people who watched it when it was Facebook Lived.
Wow.
From the Mandel JCC up in New York.
That is so cool.
And a big thank you to them, and a thank you to Rabbi Emily Cohen of the West End Synagogue, who coordinated it, and the Mandel JCC, who had the technology and the technists to run it. So it was wonderful. It went, we were all of the rabbis got on the Zoom about a half hour before. And if you watch our Facebook Live, you'll see the last minutes of sound checks and all of that stuff going on before we got
that is
into
so
the service.
Cool.
And then we did it. We did our part, and the technists were wonderful. They did a great job of, giving each one the right permission so that we could share screens at the right time. And they had they had the words to the prayers. Now, that was kind of interesting because I talked about that with my congregation, and I said, do you see the difference between the slides that we use and what they're using? And people said, yeah, we could read yours. I said, yeah, because what they were doing is simply showing pages with the text on it, and our pages were very big so that people could see them.
Sure, yeah.
And because these folks are used to Zooming, they're not thinking of the screen in front of the sanctuary.
Oh.
So the print is much smaller. And
sure.
That's important when you're dealing with a screen that's, less than a foot wide when you're zooming.
Yeah, sure. Whole different perspective.
All different kinds of things to play into.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting world. That's the silver lining, if you will, out of the pandemic.
Yes.
Is that we're learning to use technology so much better. So that was a lot of fun.
That's
and it's
great.
Third Friday tonight. We will be feeding the first responders.
Oh, yeah.
So thank you to all the people who donated extra meals that will be able to do that.
Thank you to Jay's for supplying.
Thank you to Jay's. Wonderful food.
Yeah.
So with that, have a great week, and I'll see you after Turkey Day. Ask a Rabbi.
You've been listening to Ask a Rabbi right here on WPSL, Port St. Lucie. Talking the Treasure Coast, the webcaster to the world.